Hi, I'm Dean Butler, and I'm the next guest On Screen and Beyond.
On Screen and Beyond, an inside look into the entertainment world featuring interviews with people from the movie, TV, and music industry, news on upcoming TV and DVD releases, and the rumor mill. And now, here's the host of On Screen and Beyond, Brian Zemrak.
Welcome and thank you for joining me for another edition of On Screen and Beyond, the show that keeps you updated on what's coming your way as far as upcoming new movies, remakes, sequels, and TV and movie DVD releases, as well as our interview segment with a guest from the movie, TV, or music industry. This is episode 728, and I'm your host, Brian Zemrak. This week, our guest is Dean Butler, who played Almanzo Wilder on the popular Little House on the Prairie. Now, Dean joins us once again. He's been on a couple of times over the years, and he's going to be talking about the show, of course, and we will learn a little bit more about his career. Dean Butler coming up in a few minutes right here on Screen and Beyond. But first, just want to remind you, have you subscribed or followed us on your favorite podcast provider or YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram? Well, I hope you will, because what are you waiting for? You can get the new episodes as soon as they're released by doing that. Don't miss a single one of these fascinating guests that we have. And while you're at it, tell your friends about On Screen and Beyond and share our posts on socials so you can enjoy your friends having fun listening to some of these great people that we've been having on all the time here at On Screen and Beyond. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you are. Just make sure you got it, whether it's podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Alexa, Podbeam, Spotify, or if you want the video version, you can get it on Spotify or YouTube. And if you want to communicate with me or have a question, email me at feedback@onscreenandbeyond.com. So, that's the way we can, I love hearing from you. And we've got a full schedule of releases coming our way. And Dean Butler is coming up in a few minutes right here on Screen and Beyond. So it's time for remakes, sequels, and prequels.
Please hang up and try again.
Remake, sequels, and prequels, the live-action Lilo and Stitch romps our way on May 23rd. May 21st, the live-action Snow White will march into cinemas. And Zootopia 2 from Disney lands on November 26th. And a screenwriter has been hired, get ready for this, to write a sequel to The Goonies. Finally, after all these years, they've been talking about it. They're actually going to do it. Steven Spielberg will produce it, and we'll see if it really happens. And James Cameron's Avatar, Fire and Ash will make fans happy on December 19th. And that's it for remakes, sequels, and prequels. Coming up next on Screen and Beyond, upcoming new movies. Upcoming new movies, The Friend with Naomi Watts and Bill Murray goes wide release on April 4th as a man leaves his Great Dane with a friend. And The Phoenician Scheme from Wes Anderson will star Benicio del Toro, Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, and Scarlett Johansson. That's on May 30th. And look for Green Day in a coming-of-age film called New Year's Rev. And that's it for upcoming new movies. Next on Screen and Beyond, it's movies and TV on DVD and streaming. Movies and TV on DVD and streaming. 1996's Daylight with Sylvester Stallone will release on 4K and Blu-ray March 4th. Moana 2 on March 18th lands on 4K Steelbook. Tommy from 1975 with The Who blasts on to 4K and Blu-ray on March 18th. 2013's World War Z with Brad Pitt arrives on a 4K Ultra HD Steelbook and Blu-ray release on March 18th. And on March 25th, Tommy Boy with Chris Farley from 1995 will get the 4K Steelbook and Blu-ray treatment. And that's it for movies and TV on DVD and streaming. Coming up next on Screen and Beyond, it's TV and entertainment time. TV and entertainment time. Catherine Zeta-Jones will star in a TV adaptation of the thriller novel The Price You Pay, and it's tentatively called Kill Jackie. A live-action series for Netflix is in the works of Dungeons and Dragons from Sean Levy. And a spinoff of For All Mankind is underway over at Apple TV Plus. That's it for TV and entertainment time. And he's back. Dean Butler, who played Almanzo Wilder on Little House of the Prairie, is next, right here on Screen and Beyond.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm John Davidson, and you know what? I am on Screen and Beyond. I'm excited.
Joining us today on Screen and Beyond is a returning guest who is an actor, producer, and director. He co-starred as Moondoggie on the new Gidget, and he was Buffy's dad on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, among other roles, and he has appeared on Broadway. But he will always be remembered for his role on Little House on the Prairie. It's Dean Butler. Dean, welcome back to On Screen and Beyond.
Well, Brian, 3 times. Wow. I mean, just it's amazing how these things over 18 years, how these appearances come and go and so on. Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you here. It's always fun, and we'll look at different things that you're doing and have done and everything else. So, last year was the 50th anniversary of Little House on the Prairie. We talked about that a year ago, I think it was. And you had events all over the country. Now, I think, am I correct? I just had Allison on the show. So she mentioned
yes.
that some people were still doing those. So I don't know if you are, but, how is it when you go to these events? What's the reception like for all the fans?
Well, Allison and I do a lot of events together, and she has a whole schedule. I mean, nobody runs around the planet more than Allison Ongram, being Nellie Olson. I mean, it's unbelievable. But Allison and I are involved actually in a venture called Prairie Legacy Productions, where we are taking over the production of our fan events. We had an experience late last year, or actually in September of last year, where we had just not a great experience with a promoter, and we decided that we're going to take it on ourselves because we want people who come to see us to have a good experience. So listen, the experience with Little House fans is pretty extraordinary. This is a very devoted group of people who have been watching the show, in some cases, for multiple generations. There are new young fans coming to Little House all the time because parents and grandparents share it with them. So it is this ongoing thing. And I think it's ongoing because Little House always has represented something that is fundamentally good and decent about being a human being. And it offers an aspirational view of how to live. It also offers some object lessons on how not to behave, which is why, of course, the Olsons are there. They're there to tell people how not to behave.
Right. Yeah. The two sides.
The Olsons are always redeemable. They always are redeemed at the end. So they're ready to be outrageous in the next episode. But so it always works. I think these are Michael told these little morality tales about goodness and decency, and offered foundational lessons about how to live and how to behave. And I think that people love that in this little bubble of Walnut Grove, which is someplace that nobody's been. There's no place like it. It's like this laboratory for human behavior in a sort of an interesting way. And I think people have continued to love it for that reason.
Definitely. And now, how is it for you when you go and you see all these people? I mean, Allison was telling me that there was 18,000 people over 2 days at one event. It's like, that's crazy.
Well, it was 18,000 over 3 days in Simi Valley last year from 27 countries, Brian. Wow. And I think it was really a love fest. I think it is, I mean, it's incredibly gratifying. I mean, I guess that's really the overarching feeling, is that there's this enormous gratitude for the fact that people are moved and inspired by this in a way that they want to come and see us. Uh, I think for me personally, and I think for Allison, I know for Allison, because I think no one cares for the people who love her better than Allison does. Um, it's very important to me doing these appearances, Brian, that when people meet me in these experiences, that they feel like that they come away from that interaction feeling like they met the person that they've been watching all those years on television. I look, I just bring who I am. That's what I was in the series. I brought who I was. That's what people see when they come and see me. And that's really, really important to me. And I think that's been largely, I have to say, I think that's been largely successful. And I've been incredibly moved by just the emotional response that comes at me, at Allison, at all of us. Charlotte Stewart gets this incredible response, who of course was Miss Beadle for so many years, for 4 years on Little House, and was really America's most beloved school teacher. And she still evokes this incredible love and affection in people. It's very special, and it's just beautiful to be a part of.
Yeah, if only Michael could have been here for this. I'm sure he would have been so pleased.
I hope so. I hope he would have been pleased. I know his children were enormously pleased. Michael Landon Jr. and Leslie Landon Matthews were there. And of course, both of them were involved in the series. They were old enough to be involved in the series as young people. Leslie played our final school teacher, Etta Plum, in season 9 of Little House. Seeing in their eyes how thrilled they were by the response that was gotten that they were seeing from people who had come to the event was incredibly great. I just loved standing back, watching them watch the people, and seeing the joy in people's eyes. I think that was one of the things about the event. And look, it wasn't a perfect event. We had hiccups, we had long lines,
that's normal.
It's a one-off event. You don't really know what's going to happen until it happens. But the thing that we saw over the 3 days, the largest emotional life that we saw was just joy. It was joy and happiness. And when Little House fans get together, they become friends immediately. And I think this is true for all programs where there is this common interest. You have this affection, and then you're suddenly around hundreds, thousands of people who share the same love and affection that you do. You're instantly bonded with those people, and you see that at these events. And it's like one little family becomes a huge family. A huge extended family. I mean, people make friends. They write to each other. They while they're standing in line to get an autograph, they become best friends. And I think that's fun to see happen when you're there. You see happiness.
Yep.
And despite the long lines, despite the waiting, they're so happy to be there. And that's incredibly gratifying for all of us.
Yeah. And something, we need that now. We need people to be happy and all that. It's just, something that we don't have enough of, actually.
Brian, I couldn't agree more. I think we are at a very challenging place in our country's evolution, and really it's beyond the borders of our country. We are at a very challenging place globally now. And I think that people come to Little House and programs. I mean, there are very few shows that are exactly like Little House, but they come to Little House because it's this safe place. They feel like they can let their guard down and everything's going to be okay as they watch this episode for an hour or they binge watch for a day or whatever they're going to do. I mean, it's even in the sad, tragic episodes, there is grace and decency and goodness.
Yep.
Even in crisis, there is grace and decency and goodness. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. This is what you're touching on. That somehow we're losing grace and decency and goodness. It is there's a different energy in the world right now, and I think it's not. I don't think it's sustainable without something really coming off the rails badly, unless we can find a way to be. We don't have to agree with each other. I mean, that's fine. We're not going to necessarily always agree with each other, but there has to be some basis in goodness to find some common ground that allows everyone to be okay. Mm-hmm. That's really, really important.
Yeah. And you know something, I find that when you go to an event like what you have, or you're on vacation to another country or something, and when the people are together, everybody's having, nobody is against each other, everybody's having a good time. I think there's other things that are making the way the world is, it's not the people, in general.
Well, yeah, no, I think there's just, I mean, look, one can make the argument. I mean, how good has social media been for people? How is this our ability to communicate with each other now in this increasingly unfiltered way opens the door for very intense levels of communication back and forth. And I think this is unique in human history, where I can sit in my kitchen and I could send a message that conceivably could go around the world. You too, we all can sit in our kitchens and send a message that could go around the world in seconds. And if it catches, it doesn't necessarily have to be accurate. It doesn't have to be decent. It doesn't have to be ennobling in any way. It can be whatever someone wants it to be, and that affects people powerfully. It can affect people dramatically, powerfully, instantly, and fuels more of that. And I think that's what we are seeing. I think there's something good in curating messaging so that you can take the intensity off of something. Now, there are people who would flatly disagree with that. They want all the intensity that they can get in a message because they're trying to make an impression. Right. And I get that. And social media rewards that. No, the algorithms reward that. But is it a good thing? Mm. Is it ultimately a good thing, even if you're growing your audience? I mean, for somebody it's good, but is it good for all of us? Is it good for most of us? And I think we have to be asking these questions. And I think we are asking these questions because we're seeing the results of unfiltered, full blast communication going into cyberspace and wreaking havoc at times wherever it goes.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Mike Farrell. You're listening to On Screen and Beyond.
Now, your show is, like you were saying, is popular everywhere because everybody was coming from all over the world. But France, Allison was telling me, she's going to France next week, whatever. And it's just so popular, she says, that it's unreal.
Well, I think I think Allison has arrived at the conclusion that the French people love Nellie Olson because Nellie sort of behaves like the French in some way. I think that there's this commonality of energy that she's tapped into, with French people. And I think, it's interesting. Allison, from the very beginning, even as a young teen, when she started this, Allison got the joke. She understood who Nellie Oleson needed to be in order to be an effective presence in the show. And I think the French get the joke too.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she is just so beloved. And she plays the humor of this just like relentlessly, and she gets it. And audiences get that she gets it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very good. She's really tapped into something very special there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, you went into directing and producing and everything. Was Michael Landon any influence on that? I mean, you were young when you were on the show. You were early 20s. Did you watch him a lot to absorb all that?
Watching Michael was like going to film school. I mean, I think if
better
yeah, because you're really right there. Yeah, you're really right there. Class goes on for 10 hours a day when he's directing and when he's doing what he does. Michael understood what he was trying to do with Little House creatively, technically. He understood it incredibly well, and he had all the tools in the toolbox to do it as an actor, as a writer, as a producer, as a director. I mean, I think if you look at what Michael did, what Michael loved the most, I think, was the directing. Michael liked being in charge. There's no question about that. And he did it so efficiently. When you watched, he didn't waste time. He didn't shoot an enormous amount of it. Michael was supremely confident about what he was doing. Look, you could watch all that. You'd love to be able to pick up some small incremental pieces of that. I think what I watched more than anything else was how Michael moved the camera. I think that was really, really interesting to me. And watching how he interacted with talent. And Michael was a very minimalist director. He did not say a lot to the talent, which I think was the next part of the lesson with Michael, the director, is Michael understood, and I think it becomes really clear the more you watch media. So much of the success of a program is, and actors know this, producers certainly know this, and maybe audiences understand it too, but so much of it is about the casting. If the person that comes in the room speaks to you in a particular way because you want a certain thing to be present, an energy to be present on the screen, a certain humanity to come across. If you see that, I mean, you know it when you see it. When that person walks in the door and talks to you, you know that's the person, or could be the person at the very least. And then there could be many people, but it's really I haven't been in a lot of casting situations, not a ton of them, but it's always very clear when the right person walks in the door. And it's been said for years that casting decisions are made in about 8 seconds. When someone steps in the door, you know it, and you know it really fast. It doesn't mean that they're going to get the job because someone else may walk in, but you know immediately if they could do the job, if you believe they could do the job, just based on their look, their sound, the energy that comes off of them, based on what you know you're looking for, this character that you're, or this presence that you need. You know it right away. So, actors get the jobs they're supposed to get. And I think that certainly was true for Little House. It's true for everything. When you get a job, you're supposed to get that job because you're bringing something uniquely necessary to the feeling that program, that show, that play, that musical, that whatever it is trying to evoke in people. And so actors do well if they just come in the door being themselves, because it's going to be that flavor, if it's authentic, is going to be right for somebody at some point. Don't know when. I think, when you're a young actor, you think you can be all things to all people, and you can't. I mean, maybe when you're in high school, when you're playing parts where as a 16, 17-year-old person, you're playing an 80-year-old man or an 80-year-old woman. Well, you can do that in high school because you have to do it in high school. But in the real world, they're going to wait for that 80-year-old person to walk in the door, and they're going to wait for the 16-year-old kid or the 20-year-old or whoever it is and whatever it is. That person that's the right thing will eventually walk in the door. And when they see that, they know it, and they will hire that. And Michael was masterful at seeing the people that he believed would be the right flavor for what he was doing. And it was the same kind of flavor of actor in everything Michael did, going back to, now Michael wasn't involved in running Bonanza. He had a lot of influence on it at the end, but Little House was really the first thing where his influence was complete or relatively complete from the beginning, and then totally complete after season 1. Michael had complete control of the show. Obviously, Highway to Heaven, Michael had total control. Michael owned the show. He was totally in charge of that. And Michael had an uncanny sense of what he wanted, and he knew, Brian, and I'm going way off on this. I'm sorry. Michael knew that what he was doing was not for everybody. He said to me one time, I know there's a big percentage of the audience that couldn't care less about what I'm doing. But, he said, I also know there's a huge percentage of the audience that loves what I do. And I'm going to keep giving it to them. And Michael gave the audience what they expected from him for 20 plus years in prime time.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it was over 30 years. If you look at Michael was what people wanted in Bonanza. He was what people wanted in Little House. And then, of course, Highway to Heaven. And then he was ready to do something else before he got ill.
Yeah.
He was just very, very gifted at understanding what an audience wanted. And he knew what they wanted from him. And he gave it to them.
Your career after Little House, of course, it kept going and going. It's, I mean, the show was done, but the movies kept coming and everything. But you jumped on to being Moondoggie on the new Gidget. Now,
right,
you worked with, and I hope I say his name right, William Schallert.
Schallert.
And
yes. Bill Schallert was
veteran.
everybody's dad.
Yes,
he was. Every young girl's dad. He was so perfect in those situations. I always remember Bill Schallert from his one appearance on the original Star Trek, where he played the pedantic political administrative guy. Bill was so talented. I mean, Bill could play the piano. He could do comedy. He could do intense drama. Bill was a leader. He was president of the Screen Actors Guild at one point. Bill was a very solid character and a really wacky sense of humor too, which you didn't always see. I mean, if it was the right situation, but he just had enormous access to humor and great gravitas if that was needed. Bill was a very multi-talented guy.
Was it tough taking over that role? Well, not taking over the role because it was a new show, but there was James Darren.
I'm the seventh Moondoggie.
Yeah, there was James Darren, and wasn't there Cliff Robertson?
Cliff Robertson. No, Cliff Robertson was the original Big Kahuna.
Oh, the Big Kahuna. Okay.
Yes, for Sandra Dee, Cliff Robertson was the Big Kahuna. I'm trying to think of who all the Moondoggies are not as clear. Like in the Gidget series, which Sally Field starred in, I mean, there was a Moondoggie, but you didn't really see him much. I think he was more of an object for her. The way we did it, mean, Gidget and Moondoggie were grown up. They had gotten married. They, were living their life. Now, we started off with Gidget's Summer Reunion, which was a sort of a traditional rom-com kind of vibe is what it was. And then when the show was syndicated, it was syndicated in prime access and had reruns on Saturday mornings. So suddenly the show went from being sort of an adult romantic comedy to a live action cartoon by necessity, because that's where the audience was. That's who was going to be seeing it in those time periods. It was going to be more kids than anything else. So the show went through this really dramatic shift between the pilot and going on the air as a series. And there were some growing pains getting there to that. But when Columbia Pictures Television brought in executive producer Larry Mullen to run the show, and Larry had just a really uncanny sense of youth culture. And he really got it. And it got to be sort of cotton candy. We had a director that described it as cotton candy and pink fluff. And that's what the new Gidget became. And for those who liked it, it was just silly, ridiculous. It was sort of, in the vein of what the Monkees had been. It just, it had that kind of broad comedic center to it. And that's what was required. And Karen Richmond and I, who, Karen, who's the seventh Gidget and delightful, we just waded into this. I think, we pushed back a little bit in the beginning thinking, Micah, this isn't what we signed up for. But, series are always like that. You never really know what you're getting other than when you do a pilot. That's the only script you ever know that you know about and understand before you start the job. After that, in a series, the scripts just keep coming. And you just have to deal with those scripts as they come to you and dive in head first. And that's what we did. Yeah. And it was appropriately fun and silly. Yeah. And some great Beach Boys music, which of course was the ultimate demise of the series in syndication, because the music was those licenses were so expensive to renew that the show was just put on the shelf. And so it really hasn't been seen in any substantial way for, my God, 35 years, well, 30 years. Yeah. It really hasn't been seen in 30 years. Yeah. But we had fun. Yeah. We had fun.
And next year is actually the 40th anniversary of that show.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible?
Sorry, Dean.
No, well, that's sort of inevitable. Look, I guess, look, there's an upside to that. We're here if we're here to celebrate that. There's always that one day those anniversary is going to come and we're not going to be here.
That's right. Nothing goes backwards.
I think we need to enjoy we got to enjoy the anniversaries while they're happening.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Now, Broadway. You did some Broadway too. Do you enjoy being on stage like that?
Oh, I love being on stage. Actors will always tell you that being on the stage is an actor's medium. Working in front of the camera is a producer's, director's medium. When the curtain goes up and the lights come on and the actors come on the stage, they're in charge. There's a plan. There's, there's the blocking and the music starts when it's supposed to start, hopefully, and the songs go well. But the actor is responsible for making those moments happen every night on the stage. And that's very empowering. And I think if you're an actor who enjoys that, that's a very powerful place to be because you're in charge. And I loved it. I did 320 performances of Into the Woods on Broadway, part of the original company. I was the first replacement in the part, the Rapunzel's Prince part that I played, and worked opposite Tony winner Robert Westenberg, who was Cinderella's prince and the big bad wolf. Into the Woods was about Grimm's fairy tales. The premise of the show is what happens after Happily Ever After. And really great shows. Stephen Sondheim, James Lapine, very clever music and book. Such talented people. I'd never been around from top to bottom in a cast such a um, high energy group of talented people. And I think you find that in the Broadway community. There's a life force in a Broadway company that is higher than the life forces you find in other situations. At least in my experience. And there's a joy that you see in the people doing that work that's really special. So to have been a part of that for a year was just this incredible gift. I loved that, and there's a part of me that wished I had, in retrospect, had stayed in New York and tried to do more of that, because I think it's a more natural environment for me than being on camera. But I wanted to come back to Los Angeles and see what else would happen. As it turned out, really what happened by the late 90s into the 2000s is I really turned my attention towards producing and all of that. And I loved that, Brian, because as an actor, you're, at least in film, you're the last one hired and you're the first one done. And there is so much that goes on before the actors show up, and there's a ton that goes on after the actors are done. And I really craved that, being before the actors and after the actors. I've described to people for many years, talking about this. I love sitting in front of it's a little anxiety provoking, but I love sitting in front of the blank page on my computer screen. There's nothing. You don't know what it's going to be. You have an idea, and you sit down to write something, and you prepare it, and you shoot it, and you finish it, and you deliver it. But I love being there from the blank page to the final product. And anybody who does, look, you do this podcast, that's your world. You're part of it for every phase of the process, from the idea to every episode that you drop. And I think for a lot of people, that's really the excitement. The doing of the conversation in this case is the smallest part of the process. It's fun, but there's so much more to be done. And I have enjoyed being a part of that totality. And I think that's really been, for me, the best part of the work. And while it doesn't yield the kind of adoration that you get from being Almanzo Wilder, it's very satisfying emotionally, mentally, to do that work. So it's been fun to have both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Well, Dean, I want to finish up. We're running out of time here, but before I do that, is there a place that people can go to, socials or website or something, where they can find out where you're still going to be doing the Little House shows?
Yeah, I think I am always at official Dean Butler, one word. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as official Dean Butler. And anything that is Little House related, it will, because either I'm putting something out or I follow all those entities. The Little House world, sort of, along with a lot of other things, flows through these websites or through these social channels. And so, yeah, people can find out about that. We also have our Little House 50th anniversary podcast that Allison and I do with an actress, producer, performer named Pamela Bob. So, we have littlehouse50podcast.com. We are on YouTube. We are any place that you can watch podcasts. You can find us, Little House 50th Anniversary Podcast. So, a lot of information about the Little House world flows through a lot of different channels. And so if you want to find out about Little House, it just get to Google and search, and it will pop up. A lot will pop up.
Okay. Well, final question. When you sit back and relax, what's your favorite TV shows now and of the past, and what's your favorite movies?
Oh, wow. Um, you know, right now, I have to say that there's not a lot that I'm watching that's new now. Although, I mean, I certainly enjoy things in terms of. I mean, we watch so much news now, Brian. We've become so obsessed with keeping up with what's going on in the world. Um, but when I watch, I mean, at night we watch Friends, we watch Everybody Loves Raymond, we watch Two and a Half Men, we watch. This is sort of what's on television as we're going to bed at night.
Mm-hmm.
And then movies. I have my old friend movies that I've loved for years, and things like silly little movie that I've loved for years, Galaxy Quest. That
I love that. I love that too.
Yeah. I mean, it's what a wonderful send up of the whole fan actor experience through these characters in this fictional Star Trek like drama. It's just so much fun. And anybody who's been anywhere around that world gets that movie huge because it really speaks to it in an insightful and fun way, So that's why, I mean, my goodness, I mean, I watched for years so many of old Robert Redford movies, Jeremiah Johnson and The Natural, and these movies are just love those movies. Been watching Robert Redford as a kid was one of the things that made me say, well, maybe I could do something like that. I mean, it's funny how where your feelings of possibility come from. I could have for years I could have watched Robert Redford peel grapes. Wouldn't have mattered what he was doing.
Well, Dean, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share with us, and keep going with the Little House.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Nice to be with you. Bye.
And many thanks for Dean Butler for sharing his story with us and keeping an eye out for the events that he and the other Little House cast members will be at. You can check them out, and hopefully they're in your area. If you have a suggestion for a guest here at On Screen and Beyond, you can email it to me at feedback@onscreenandbeyond.com. Always like getting your suggestions. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get podcasts. And be sure to tell a friend so they too can enjoy all these fascinating people, their favorite TV, movie, and music stars as they share their stories and projects with us each week right here on Screen and Beyond. And that's it. That's a wrap for this episode of On Screen and Beyond. So until next time, when we once again take you on screen and beyond, I'm Brian Zemrak. Take care.